Before Sabrina Carpenter became one of the biggest pop stars in the world, she was constantly living in someone else's shadow. And the strangest part, she was already famous. For years, Sabrina Carpenter had the talent, the looks, the voice, the acting career, and millions of fans. But somehow, the world still kept seeing her as someone who was almost there, almost the next big star, almost the next major pop sensation, almost the person everyone was talking about, but never quite the main character. And this is the story of how Sabrina Carpenter spent more than a decade waiting for the world to finally see what she had been building all along. Sabrina's journey started long before Espresso became one of the biggest songs in the world. She began performing at a young age and eventually made her acting debut before landing the role that introduced her to millions of viewers, Maya Hart in Disney Channel's Girl Meets World. For many young actors, a role like that would be the ultimate dream. And for Sabrina, it was a huge opportunity. But it also created a problem because when the show ended, many people still saw her primarily as a Disney actress, not as a serious recording artist, not as a future pop superstar, just the girl from Disney. But Sabrina was determined to prove that she was much more than one character. While acting, she was also building a music career. She released her debut single, Can't Blame a Girl for Trying, in 2014. Then came her first album, and then another, and another. Sabrina kept releasing music, touring, performing, and improving. But despite all that work, she still wasn't getting the kind of attention that many other young artists were receiving. This is the part of her story that many people forget. Sabrina Carpenter did not suddenly appear in 2024. She had already spent years working, years recording music, years performing on stage, years trying to find the sound and identity that truly felt like her. She had fans, she had talent, she had experience, but she was still waiting for that one moment when the entire world would finally pay attention. And during those years, the pop culture spotlight often seemed to belong to other people. Sabrina was frequently discussed alongside other young stars from her generation. But being talented isn't always enough. Sometimes timing matters. Sometimes the right song matters. Sometimes the world simply isn't ready to notice you yet. And for Sabrina, that waiting period lasted much longer than most people realize. In 2020, she landed a major opportunity on Broadway in Mean Girls. She had trained for the role, she had prepared for the stage, she was ready to perform. But then the COVID 19 pandemic shut everything down. The show was forced to close after only a short run. For Sabrina, it was another reminder that even when a major opportunity finally appeared, things could still suddenly fall apart. But that unexpected pause eventually gave her something else: time. Time to reflect, time to write, and time to create the music that would help change her career. That period eventually led to emails I can't send. And this album felt different. The music was more personal, more honest, more vulnerable. Sabrina was no longer trying to fit into the image people expected from a former Disney star. She was showing people who she really was as an artist. And slowly, something began to change. People started paying attention. Her music started reaching a wider audience. Her personality became more visible. And her performances began showing the world something that had always been there. Sabrina had incredible stage presence. Then came another major moment. Sabrina was selected to open for Taylor Swift during the Eras tour. For many artists, opening for Taylor Swift would already be a career changing opportunity. But for Sabrina, it became something even bigger. Night after night, she performed in front of massive stadium audiences. People who may not have known her before were suddenly watching her perform. And slowly, millions of people started asking the same question: who is Sabrina Carpenter? But even then, the biggest moment of her career was still ahead. Then came Espresso. And suddenly, everything changed. The song was catchy, the lyrics were playful, the sound was confident. And Sabrina's personality was impossible to ignore. The song didn't feel like she was trying to become someone else. It felt like Sabrina had finally found the perfect version of herself. The former Disney actress, the singer who had released multiple albums, the performer who had spent years touring, the artist who had been overlooked for far too long. All of those versions of Sabrina suddenly came together, and the world finally noticed. Espresso became a massive global hit. Then came Please, Please, Please. Then Taste. And suddenly, Sabrina Carpenter wasn't just the girl from Girl Meets World anymore. She wasn't just an opening act. She wasn't just a talented singer waiting for her big break. She was the headline. She was the artist everyone was talking about. Her album Short and Sweet reached the top of the charts, and her career entered an entirely new level. And that's what makes Sabrina Carpenter's story so interesting, because the world often describes stars like her as overnight successes. But Sabrina's success was anything but overnight. When Espresso became a worldwide phenomenon, people saw the explosion. They saw the viral performances, they saw the sold out shows, they saw the glamorous outfits, they saw the massive songs. But they didn't always see the years before that, the early auditions, the acting roles, the albums that didn't become global sensations, the years of touring, the setbacks, the moments when she had to continue working even when the world wasn't watching. And maybe that's why her rise feels so satisfying. Because Sabrina didn't suddenly become talented when Espresso was released. She had been talented for years. The difference was that the world finally caught up. For a long time, Sabrina Carpenter seemed to be living in someone else's shadow. But eventually, she stopped trying to chase someone else's spotlight. She created her own. And perhaps the biggest lesson from her story is this: being overlooked does not mean you are not good enough. Sometimes it simply means your moment has not arrived yet. Sabrina Carpenter spent years being underestimated, years being remembered for what she had already done instead of what she was capable of becoming. But when her moment finally came, she was ready. Because behind every overnight success is often a story that nobody saw. And Sabrina Carpenter's story proves that sometimes the person everyone overlooks for years can eventually become the person the entire world cannot stop watching.